So Jimmy turns to me. We're looking at these dudes with their hand on this money, and Jimmy goes,
Mhm.
"So you're gonna work for me, you know?" And I remember distinctly looking at him, and I go, "No, I've worked for YouTubers before, Jimmy. This is not. I'm not doing that at all." And he goes, "No, no,
Wow.
you don't understand. You will move here, and you're going to work for me, and we're gonna do incredible things." And it was just this moment where I was like, a sideways door was open, presented to me, light shone through it, and I was like,
Mhm.
"There's adventure on the other side of that."
Welcome to Extraordinary Stories. I'm your host, Forbes Shannon, and with me,
Christine Butler.
and today, the man who's at the center of our nebulous here in Scottsdale. He is like bigger than life, the biggest, you might even say. He's super extraordinary in a bunch of different ways, and I'm really
Agreed.
excited for you guys to meet the digital strategist of digital strategists, Brady Edwards. Brady, thanks for being here, man.
Welcome, Brady.
Well, thanks for nominating me, guys. I'm honored. I saw you posting about this, and I was like, okay, this is a very cool idea, and I'm very glad
Yeah,
you're doing it. Power throughing a show is not for the faint of heart. People
No.
underestimate it every single 100% of the time, and then I so then they get to and they're like, "We're 5 in. Do we quit because this is difficult?" And I love that you guys are just grinding it out, and the concept's really
Well,
cool.
Brady, let me just tell you, Forbes and Aaron were like, "Hey, Chris, we got an idea for you." And I'm like, "Oh, what? Like, what is it? Another book? Like, what can it be?" And they're like, "We want you to co-host Extraordinary Stories." I'm just like, "What?" Like,
yeah.
so, like, it honestly, to me, this is the newest thing I've ever done. But like, you're so right. It takes skill. Like, you're thinking about everything all at once. You're talking about like what you're thinking, what you're saying, how you're looking. There's so many things that people don't really realize when they're sitting scrolling on their phone. You
Yeah,
know?
for sure. Well, what I really like is all the stuff that I'm learning.
Yes.
I learned
Yeah.
so much from getting to sit down with these extraordinary people. And it's because they're nominated by other extraordinary people, and that's the network effect. And Brady, you were nominated by two people in the Extraordinary Collaborative who find you extraordinary, Austin Jack and Aaron Bear. How do you know Austin and Aaron?
I know Austin because we're working together, and he's quickly become one of my favorite people because he's so adaptive, but he's I like surrounding myself with people that have access that almost no one else has.
Mm.
I find that compelling because for the most
Mhm.
part, I'd say 380 million people in this country. Most of them are going to kind of walk through life and network effect know a couple hundred people and maybe at most ever meet a couple dozen truly remarkable people. That's just everybody's. And then you meet someone like an Austin Jack or Aaron Bear, and you find out that they're sitting in the epicenter of like the most remarkable humans ever that have the same 24 hours in the day as everybody else, but went and just moved heaven and earth like tectonic shifts. And
Mhm.
Austin being in behind the scenes, raising a ton of capital from the donor class, from private, reserved, billionaires and wealthy folks looking to make some of their capital move and change the way that things look. And Austin would allocate that. So we work with him now and we grow his show called The American Conversation, which is doing very well already. And then I've just known Aaron for, I don't know, years. I think I met him through Upgrade.
Yeah. Hmm.
If I had to guess, it's
Really?
probably through William. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so my
Hmm.
my business partner, who is a master of the mind, a neurolinguistic programmer, a certified board certified hypnotist, and a master practitioner, who changed my life after I left MrBeast and fundamentally changed how I think about the world around me. I met Aaron through him.
Hmm. Hmm. So, Brady, let's maybe we'll start there. What changed for you? Maybe if you want to paint the picture of where you were and what changed. I mean, so for context, Brady is wildly successful,
Mhm.
especially for his age. I like
Right.
to call that out. And also,
He
just
just got married.
yes, he did. Yeah,
Joined the club.
congratulations.
I
Congratulations.
joined the club. Thank you. Yeah, pretty wild.
How does it feel?
It's incredible. I thought it would feel the
Mhm.
exact same because my wife and I we've lived together for like 3 years. She's the COO of
Mhm.
my company, and I'm like, we're in our routine. And we literally live together and we work together all day and we live together again. Like, it's not gonna feel different, and it does. It's the level of energetic commitment, That's my wife now.
Let's maybe start with the Mr. Beast because that is an extraordinary intro into the Brady story. If you'd like, kind of
Yeah,
take us back there and kind of explain how that shaped you to who you are now.
yeah. Dude, we're just in the weirdest time ever as a species. In the last 100 years, we've gone from like families crowding around the radio, and that was kind of their
Yeah.
source to any kind of
Yeah.
connectivity, like what's going on as we are invading Normandy, and that was it
Mhm.
was the radio, right? And so just to
Right.
see this exponential, the printing press before that, but to see this exponential curve as technology's gotten better, to go from that to television stations to satellite to YouTube, everything else. I grew up in this fascinating time for our species and instantly noticed the things that were probably outliers. I'm like, agriculture didn't
Mhm.
draw me, construction. I liked entertainment. And I was actually on Disney Channel as a kid and Nickelodeon. I was in a couple different shows. So I've always had proximity to this world, but that was like the TV world, right? A couple
Mhm.
movies, child actor stuff. What happened is then the internet really got huge and this thing called YouTube went online and I started
Mhm.
using it pretty consistently in the 2010s for everything. I started learning everything from there. I got my degree in advertising and that was fun, but like I'm not going to go work at an ad agency. I like creating. That was the part
Mhm.
that appealed to me. That and there was no math and they had a Xbox in the lounge at our campus. I'm like everything's
I
about
know
this is
math is
great.
important.
You gotta have your priorities. But what I figured out very quickly is that something about this YouTube thing was here to stay. It was gaining compounding momentum, and the creators in like 2017 were pulling in millions of dollars, and they were literally younger than me.
Mhm.
They're like 22, and they're just well, what are they? They're just chaos monkeys, and they film it and then they post consistently, and they get millions of dollars. If you look around, that's just not a thing anywhere else. If you look at the time, like 2017, now it's everywhere. But 8 years ago, that was such an insane concept. But I was obsessed with this idea that there might be some emergent phenomenon with people wanting to outsource going and doing stuff to a YouTuber. Instead, just saying, I'll sit down and I'll kind of vicariously live your life with you. Thus was the vlogging era born. So I got really into it. I felt like that was my calling. And so I just started watching YouTube tutorials and I picked up a camera for the first time in 2017. I was like, I'll just get good at this. And you can learn anything on YouTube. Fast
Yeah.
forward a year later of just grinding, willing it out, kind of imagining I got onto a YouTube channel with 10 million subscribers. Now I'm living in this kid's house. We had supercars everywhere. His name's Tanner Fox, and we had a partnership with Hot Wheels. So now I'm traveling all over the world. I'm picking up $500,000 cars. I'm meeting creators I used to watch on YouTube, and I'm like, this is my every single day life now. I live in this house. I'm making videos. It was so crazy. But also, I was the old man in the house. I was 28, and all the kids were 18, and they're pulling in $5 to $10 million annually. So I'm Unk, and it was it was a weird life. I collaborated with some other channels though, and a little bit while later, I got an invite through someone that I know that said, "Hey, Mr. Beast and their YouTube channel, they're growing like crazy, and the cameras are getting more complex, and they need someone else that can come in, help architect systems, and just think on their feet really quickly." And you've already done that clearly. So I got brought into the Mr. Beast channel during one of the bigger, most parabolic arcs in their attention, and then right at COVID, actually, which was really weird to live through. So while I was there, I have about 10 billion views that the videos that I did have 10.2 billion. And it was
Gee.
crazy because every video is completely different and they
Right.
all require the most bizarre planning. And I think what was hardest and also the best part about it is no one's done anything like this before. There are no case studies.
Mm.
There's no one
Right.
to look over there and
Mhm.
just be like, "Oh, let's kinda do what they did." That was the point is no one has done this because we had the
Mm.
budget, we'd get videos that have $800,000 in, $1,000,000 in, and you go, "What's the destination?" Like, the box office? Like, no, it's freaking YouTube. And so this whole thing,
Endless.
just riding on the spear's tip of it and living and working with Jimmy, Mr. Beast's name is Jimmy, you get to see what the internet looks like from the vantage point of the tallest mountain in the world. So the Mount Everest,
Mhm.
when you get that view, this is just like hiking, right? Like you can't describe a view to someone else. Even an iPhone photo doesn't do it. But when
Yeah.
you summit that, you learn things that no one else sees. You get to look through Mr. Beast lens. And I learned a whole bunch of nuances around how human psychology is actually interfacing with these videos, little ways of
Right.
optimizing it, hacking it, re-engaging.
Mhm.
It was the coolest experience of my life, and so I took those principles and I've since built my agency around those themes, those thesis, those strategies, and we're growing shows like crazy.
Brady, was there a moment in your life, maybe like in the shower or swimming in the pool or working out or any of your meditative moments that you were just like, holy goodness, I have a billion eyes on something that I was a part of?
Mm.
Is that like a separating feeling?
I have a really good example of that because later down
Yeah.
the road, it just became, we're just doing the next video. We're just doing the next video. You kind of almost
Mhm.
had no time to really reflect on it because we always had 3 videos that were cooking at any given time.
Mm,
So it was 7 days a week, 14-hour days, and because I was the video director, I was in an executive position, and so at any given point, Mr. Beast is calling me for, "Hey, come over here. I have an idea for an Instagram story, but I need you to film it." And so I have to, if I'm off the clock, it's like I was
yeah.
on the clock. So,
Mm,
the whole career really not a moment like that, but when I first got there, there was a moment. It was the strangest thing. The studio that they bought, it was like an old church, like an old worship. So they had like a,
Mhm.
like a chapel. They cleared it all out. Now it's a film studio. And they built this set where there was a gigantic plexiglass cube, probably like twice the size of my desk here. And in it was $1 million in cash, like cold hard cash.
Yeah.
It was probably like 6 feet off the ground, 6 feet wide. It was the most absurd thing. So I walk into this room under all these trusses, these lights, and there's just $1 million in cold hard cash in a box and 4 people all with their hand on it. And the last one to take their hand off the box wins the money.
Mm.
And so I'm sitting there and it's like they're like 20 hours in. So believe it or not, there's not a lot that happens when all you do is stand there with your money on a box. So it was like the air was quiet. Everybody's just kind of sitting, waiting. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, what is my life? Like, I like, had this reflection back to like me as a kid. I'm like, if I could have told my kid self, like, hey, one day, not only are you going to, enjoy watching these shows or help, be in a couple, but it's like you'll produce some of the biggest videos in the world. I don't think I would have believed him. And so just in that moment, it kind of washed over me. I'm like, this is so weird. And Mr. Beast is
mm,
standing next to me. Jimmy is. I hadn't accepted the offer at the time. They flew me out to do some test shooting. They're very particular now, but I was one of the first external hires that wasn't from their town in North Carolina because they're in North
mm.
Carolina. Like almost everyone that works on this channel in the beginning, they were just like townies, like homies that they went to high school with.
Wow.
If you've ever seen the show Chandler, he's one of the main characters that everybody loves. He was the janitor, and they just played basketball together. And now he's like this super celebrity. And so most of the employees there literally were like their cousins, the people that they like rented like farm equipment from. And so I was one of the first real, specialist external hires. And
Mhm.
I hadn't been convinced of it. So Jimmy turns to me. We're looking at these dudes with their hand on this money. And Jimmy goes,
Mhm.
"So you're going to work for me, you know?" And I remember distinctly looking at him and I go, "No, I've worked for YouTubers before, Jimmy. I'm not doing that at all." And he goes, "No, no,
Wow.
you don't understand. You will move here and you're going to work for me and we're going to do incredible things." And it was just this moment where I was like, a sideways door was open, presented to me, light shone through it. And I was like,
Mhm.
there's adventure on the other side of that. But then there was doubt that came with it. Cause I go, who am I to be qualified to say, yeah, I'll do this? Cause I know cameras, but I'm not perfect at this by any means. And so then the self doubt comes in. You're like, should I say
Mhm.
Mm.
yes? Cause what if I fail?
Yeah.
But I did. And my whole feature and probably everybody in this show so far that you've interviewed, they are who they are today because they took a ton of risks in things that were
Mm,
not at all clear, guaranteed, terrifying,
mhm,
probably guaranteed to fail, to be honest. And then they
mhm,
just solved for it and they didn't stop. And the resilience in not stopping is what separates an incredible life from just one you wish you'd lived differently.
mm,
I'm gonna have to sit with that one for a moment because that
Mm.
one hits as we do this extraordinary
yeah.
chapter of our lives. Yeah, I know that one hits.
So, Brady, let me ask you, you said that you had, like, a transformational moment after that first part of your career before you went in and started your own studio, the biggest agency, biggest studios. Um, can you kinda take us through what that experience was? Like, what was extraordinary about that breakthrough?
Mhm.
Well, to be honest, I looked around and just saw mostly bad videos on my Instagram feed, on my Facebook, and it really
Mhm.
occurred to me. I'm like, man, it's so obvious to me. And but I don't think it's obvious to almost anyone else, which was a really weird thing to reconcile because they're constantly putting it out. And I'm like, you're not thinking about the experience of me, the viewer, in this moment. You were just really
Mhm.
excited that
Right,
you even pulled the camera out. Maybe you were
right.
really excited you had an editor lined up, and maybe you're really excited that once you got it to the finish line, you were able to hit publish. Like that's a big deal. That's a lot of steps to jump
Mhm.
through. But they don't
Mhm,
actually think in the course of all of those moments what the experience for me, the cold viewer on the receiving end of all that work They never once planned it out or mapped it out or even thought. So you see that in the end result, right? Because you don't care. You didn't make the video. You're indifferent. And so if it's not
Mhm.
engineered for you, the viewer, you're going to swipe past it. That's why we're all so critical now with the shorts that we have. And so I noticed this as just
Mm.
a glaringly obvious issue and disconnect that most people have when they're making videos. And I thought, well, I
Mm.
look at this very weirdly, I suppose, because of my degree in advertising, my background in film and TV, and then living and working with MrBeast and the biggest channel. I was like,
Mhm.
I could probably help a lot of people with this problem.
Mm.
But, you know, so but I didn't really know what that looked like at the time because I got a camera. Well, you can do all kinds of stuff with a camera, you know? I can make dirty
Mm.
videos. I could also make commercials. I could do
Mm.
VSLs. I could do podcasts. Like it wasn't clear to me. So I left MrBeast and I thought, I know I want to start a business. I believe in myself. I think I have the credentials and I think I can just like grit this thing out. But what am I going to be? And so we did
Mm.
commercials for publicly traded companies, like it was a boner pill company. So we did a bunch of ads for them. I got a film studio here in Scottsdale. That was a good time. But then it was a
And
couple weird.
yeah, on that, Brady hit me up and he was like,
Yeah.
"Dude, you like are like the perfect looking guy to act in this." And I was like, I look like I have ED, like.
So he hits you up and is like, "Hey, do you want to be like a part
I
of this?"
think you would be the perfect face for this erectile dysfunction pill. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
There's no easy conversations around that when you're trying to hire talent or
All
anything. You're
right.
like, it's not because
Like, how
I'm
do you ask?
assuming you do, but listen, I need an actor. I
I
said, I like
forgot
your
all
look.
about that.
I liked your look,
Uh,
man. That was it. There's no
so you're doing
comment
these
on.
commercials and like, so how did you kind of land on the model that you have now where you're very selective in the extraordinary people that you work with, like what was that change there for you?
Yeah, fair question. It just is down to podcasting and everybody feeling like they need to have a podcast. And
Hmm.
so we got really picky with it. The reality is there's the author of the quote, I'm going to botch it, but he says, everybody within everyone is a book to be written. And for the most
Mhm.
part, that's where it should stay.
Yes. I fully agree.
And so like with that,
That's
it's like,
funny.
not everybody really has too deep a well to draw from. And so, hey, it's not obvious. You can do whatever you want. Okay. It's America, but
Mm.
there's just not going to be a ton of interest in it if you don't have extraordinary stories. If you don't have an
Mm.
incredible, Rolodex of people you can tap in and say, let's come have a really good conversation. Or maybe
Mhm.
most importantly, if you as a host or someone consistently showing up, do you have an ability to like compel and like captivate someone? Right? There's a
Mm.
storytelling thing that happens in a really good podcast format. Someone's voice can be miserable and monotone. We all know someone like that. And there's no color to what they're delivering. And they'll
Mhm.
be colorblind in this regard. They're not even going to understand that they themselves are the
Mhm.
issue. And so, for that
Mhm.
reason, you can lead a horse to water, but sometimes it's pretty hard to polish this turd. And so, we got really selective on, hey, if we're going to work with you, we want to make sure that you actually have real subject matter expertise. Like you've done something remarkable. And for 100 episodes, I could put you in front of a camera. You don't need to go and check an owner's manual. You know this stuff backwards and forwards. If you've got that
Mhm.
and you've got really cool friends, and then candidly, if you've got disposable income, because we are a luxury service, we're the best at what we do and
Mhm.
it's not free. If you've got those
Mhm.
things, we'll look at working with you. But why did we land on this? Primarily because the president got elected due to podcasts.
Mhm.
That was the big
Mhm.
moment. In fact, there were three. I'll walk you through them and my experience firsthand with podcasting. You remember COVID? Remember how that felt?
Yeah.
Terrifying. We had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
I remember seeing videos coming out from China in January of 2020. And
Me
it's
too.
dudes in hazmat suits bagging up bodies on the street. COVID spreading. What is this thing? It was terrifying. And by the way, all that was propaganda footage. But we didn't understand what COVID was, but the TV sure tried to tell us. And people caught
Mhm.
it almost immediately. Like, I don't agree with this. This is weird. Social distancing. That's not how viruses work. You're going to wear an N95 mask to stop virus particulates. That's like trying to use a chain link fence to stop a fly. None
Mhm.
of this stuff adds up, but this is what people were telling us over the television, over everything. And so, what did people do to get the truth? They went to podcasts. I went to podcasts.
Mm.
I started consuming
Mhm.
podcasts like crazy because I wanted to know how the hell to navigate the world that I was in because nothing made sense. And so,
Mm.
you've got the guy who owns the patent for a vaccine coming on Joe Rogan. giving you the information with no breaks, no interruptions, with mistakes in it. And I felt so seen in that regard. Now, there's a
Mm,
non-zero chance all of that is still under a filter of control. I grew up, I found
mm,
out a couple years ago, my dad was CIA. So I had a really weird upbringing. I was told he was Army. Turns out he was CIA. And so when he was home, we'd watch the TV, we'd watch the news, and he'd point at it and be like, someone's paying him to say that. You got to remember that guy gets a paycheck. And he would say things. I'm 4 years old with like toys in my hands. And he's like,
It's like,
that
what do you
guy's on
mean,
the
Daddy?
payroll. And I'm like, whatever. I don't know what that means, right? But it's true. Every single message that ever receives, it makes its way to you. There's a dollar behind it. And someone put that
Oh,
dollar there because there
100%.
was a goal
right.
behind it. You know, lucidly and
Mhm,
unemotionally, that's the case. So there's a
mhm,
non-zero chance that these podcast conversations, maybe they are controlled. I don't know. But I don't
mm,
trust the TV. Okay. That's an easy baseline for most of us to operate at.
mhm,
So I saw this podcast thing and I finally, for the first time, felt like I was getting data to start underwriting the way that I was looking at the world right now, because the world was in chaos. So through
mm,
COVID, a lot of people started trusting podcasts to get information. So adaptation for listening to podcasts rose in an exponential way, basically because of COVID and because people had absolutely nothing else to do. The
mhm,
second thing is in November of 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT. And it was really exciting. Wow, you can have your papers and it's kind of fun, whatever. But the human response was, I don't freaking know if I'm like ready for this. Like me as a
mm,
Homo sapien, this robot, artificial intelligence, we're doing this now. It was really unsettling.
mhm,
And it got better and better and better. And so what happened is like an antibody response is people started going, man, screw this. Like I kind of just want like people. I don't want any digital,
mm,
whatever. And so people started listening to podcasts more to understand AI, to understand the Ukraine war, to understand conflict with Iran or Taiwan, or to listen to true crime, to be entertained by Theo Vaughn. All of these, intersecting reasons for people using it, it just became the new medium. So then when the president went on like 30 podcasts and ultimately got elected by swinging most of these fence sitting individuals and saying, you know what? Yeah, dude, no one's perfect. Trump's pretty crazy. He's probably done some terrible shit. But I also listened to him for 3 hours.
mm,
And I actually feel like I understand him
Mm-hmm.
better than I would if I was just a soundbite. And the other side
mm,
of that coin is really interesting to me is I listened to Kamala Harris on Diary of a CEO after she lost. It
Yeah.
came out like a couple
Yeah.
months ago. And I got to tell you, I had no love for Kamala Harris, especially during the election cycle. And then I listened to her interview and I came out going, I still wouldn't vote for her, but I really like her. And that's the power of
mhm,
it.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Absolutely.
actually like,
mhm,
she said something that actually like brought a tear to my eye. She was talking about her family,
Mm-hmm.
very close to my family. And I was like, this is someone that a year ago was so pilloried in my mind, I wouldn't hear
mm,
anything she had to say. But when you can put somebody in front of, an audience, you have a compelling message and you can just do it uninterrupted, you will be
mm,
shocked at how much things change.
Right.
mhm,
Because short form is 30 seconds long.
mm,
And there's just only so much impact that you can have on someone's impressions, within 30 seconds. But if someone's opting in on, hey, I'll spend 20 minutes with you, I'll spend 2 hours with you, your ability to convert them in any kind of form, by your hat, by your course, by your merch, if you can do that over
Mm-hmm.
time, that attention and time spent together will compound. And if Joe Rogan put out, a balding head shiner product, if ever, I would buy that because I'm like, it's him.
right.
Because that's
Even with
the
that head of hair. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Even
get it.
with that gorgeous set of hair.
So it's a filter. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Um,
Just move around, see if it falls off.
Yeah. It just moves too quick and
Yeah,
it'll
the
lose
Snapchat
you.
filter's holding tight.
I kind of want to return to the storytelling angle because I think that's really interesting that you dialed in on is, um, what you found is that podcasts kind of bring out this human element,
Mm-hmm.
this relatability, this resonance that you're talking about.
Well, it's almost like democratizing free speech.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's bringing you closer, I think, to the person so that you understand this person without the payroll filter, even though there's still a non-zero chance that, there's some filter on that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but my question for you, for our listeners, Brady, you know, as a guy who coaches a bunch of people on how to podcast and how to tell their story, if someone's unsure about their story right now, like what would your advice be on getting that ball rolling?
I first probe because there's a chance they're right. There's a chance that they like, you actually might not have a great story, I don't know. You might be totally honest and right. The other thought is that they might be so deep in it, too close to the problem. And so they just can't identify where the edge of that story begins, because it's
Mm,
their thing. They're like, oh, I don't know. Like so many entrepreneurs, they're just like heads down and they do some crazy stuff consistently over time, willing it out without even realizing, do you realize what you just did? This is, you look at this in retrospect, could inspire a lot of people. So when someone is too close to the problem, usually the best thing for them to do is just a writing exercise, actually. Like
mm.
I did a sales training and I know my pitch pretty well for my service. I built the agency and then I had to write it down and it changed everything. Like
Yeah.
handwriting the whole
Yeah.
thing, I was like, "Oh, this is forcing me to look at it in a different way, not this kind of reflexive muscle," which
Mhm.
for me speaking it's a pretty good trained reflexive muscle, I can do that.
Mhm.
But to, like, be forced to, in a linear fashion, write it all down, it forces you to look at it a little bit differently. And so when
So what
somebody
changed?
What's that?
When you wrote it down, what changed from what was the difference in the writing it down versus the reflexive speaking?
Probably the structuring of it. I think having to, 'cause you're using a pen, there's no erasing it, you have to
It
very
activates two separate sides of the brain.
100%. I
Mhm.
couldn't, yeah. And it forces you to look and, maybe scrap it, but, much of our communication is in response to whatever it is somebody else said. The worst communicators are waiting for
Mm.
their turn to talk, but the best ones listen and then naturally
Mhm.
respond to, well, based on that last thing you said, I summarize it in my head and this is my honest response. And so
Mhm.
we do that really well in the cadence of a conversation, but there is something about being forced to write it down, to bring it into real life. You could probably articulate it better than me, but there is something to that. So I tell people, hey, if we're looking at talking about your story or what you've built, this business that you made,
Mm.
this exit that you had, how would you
Mhm.
describe it if you were going to tell your grandkids about it? And be
Mm.
forced them to kinda write it down. It's like you want, because keep in mind, you want your grandkids to think you're cool. And so you kinda
Yeah.
need to, not embellish it, but you
Right.
have to, write it honestly and write it in an exciting way. And they go, "Well, okay, I built this company, I did this thing, here's why, and da 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 da." And I find
Mm.
that people can tap into it a little bit better that way, or they get to the bottom of it very quickly and realize, maybe this isn't the maybe I need to go back and do a
Yeah.
little bit more before I'm ready to feel like I have a story,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm.
Again,
Well,
there's a
so
book in everybody, but not all of them should be written.
Absolutely.
that's funny. I wanna so you said write it honestly. How do you define honestly in that sense?
How do I define honestly? You
W
The
well, so the
questions you ask,
question
man, my goodness.
the reason I ask is, um, like, especially when someone's too close to a problem, right? Their honesty of their reality is very different from someone else's reality of their situation, right? Like, when you have a pain, it can be the worst pain in the world because it's what you're dealing with in the moment. And you're honestly saying that. But then from someone else's perspective, the residents can be lost if their honesty isn't the same as the listener's honesty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if someone's trying to be they've done maybe the work where they just have fewer walls between them and the average person, and so they can get to the truth of it maybe a little bit faster.
Yeah. Well, I think what was interesting was you said write it honestly.
Mhm.
Right? Honestly to who? I guess is kind of what I'm saying. You tell someone go write your story and write it honestly. Is it honestly? I think of the David Beckham meme
Mhm.
where he comes out of the other room while his wife is on a podcast and he's like, "Be honest," and she was saying that she grew up in a working class, and he said, "Be honest," and it was like a
Yeah.
Bentley that was taking her to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that meme is applicable in so many ways. So my question was, when you say write it honestly, how do you define honestly? What does that mean
Mm. Yeah,
when it
I
comes to
mean,
someone's story?
people will go one of two ways. They'll either reflexively embellish and it's just exaggerate everything, or they undersell it. And it's somewhere in between. Like
Mm,
if you've done something
Mhm.
pretty incredible, you should be okay talking about that. And you should, no one else is going to have the vantage point that you have because you're the one that created it. And you're probably going to see also the network effect. So be honest about that. You're like, yeah, actually,
Mhm.
I entertained 10 billion people. I can be honest about that. It just really happened. But there's also a world, it's probably the best way for me to determine how someone's going to be on a long form is to ask them to just be really honest on this, because with the internet, and all these videos and our connections, just seeing somebody new every day, our bullshit meters are like pretty good.
Totally.
You They're pretty
Yeah.
good.
Uh-huh.
And so if
Uh-huh.
somebody is just like habitually just, I don't know, a liar or something,
Mhm.
that person's just gonna struggle. Like they're not gonna get an audience. Like people aren't gonna resonate with them. They're like, this dude, man,
Mm.
whatever. But if these people are also the opposite of that, and they're just like so good at what they do, they're so authentic, they're just innately like magnetic and they win all the time.
Mhm.
And that's just who they
Mhm.
are. Then
Mhm.
Yep.
everyone will be drawn to them. And so they'll probably have an easier time with something like honesty. And so you can learn a lot just by
Well,
telling someone to map it all out.
yeah, and what I find about authenticity or the truth, whatever version of honesty that you're telling, I think that a lot of people try to avoid the sadness or the darkness or the things that you
Mhm.
don't necessarily want to show. But what Forbes and I have noticed being ghostwriters for so many years is that maybe that's where the story is. And
Mm.
people avoid the darkness, right? All of our extraordinary guests that we've had dealt with some type of adversary to become so successful.
Mhm.
Now, do you have a moment that you are open to talk about that kind of was a dark spot in your life that really propelled you forward because of the traction?
Yeah, yeah. Well, for all most of my jobs, I've been fired from,
Mhm.
and that's a weird thing. And I would actually argue that most people, if I had to guess, like you take inventory of most workforces, probably most people are getting fired when they leave their jobs. But for some reason,
Mhm.
that's a taboo. It's like, oh, like it's like a breakup. Like the first thing people ask is
Right.
like, oh, did you end it or did they?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, yeah,
don't know
yeah. Who
why.
broke up with who?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because then I need to
Uh-huh.
like cast roles and like kind of wait this situation out with more.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, but you were the one that ended. It's on your terms, right? Oh, it was. Oh, you got dropped. Oh,
Yeah.
It was
something else. Like,
That's
what is
hers.
awesome.
it? You know,
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But for
That's fun.
most of my jobs, like in some regard,
Uh-huh.
I got fired from, and it's a very
Mhm.
humbling thing to be like, dang, here I am in this company, and they're straight up just like, we don't want to pay you more. You know, let go,
Mm,
leave out the door. And then also you're like, now I have to go get a new job and my ego's bruised. But I got let go from a company, my first company I really worked for as an adult. It was a pest control company and I like was really good at door-to-door sales. It's kind of that's how I paid for school. I was just a solicitor, which everybody
Wow.
loves, but
Yeah.
I got really good
just
at it, man.
annoy
I
people for
sold
a living.
Which everybody
No
yeah,
big
loves.
deal.
I
Yeah.
went all over the country selling pest control. I was so good at it. But
Uh-huh.
in the off season where, bugs are less prominent, I'm back in Utah where they're headquartered, and this is where I started picking up cameras. I got really into it. I was helping them with marketing,
Mhm.
and so for like 4 or 5 years, I'm working for this company. I'm loyal, I'm bought into the culture, but I'm getting really good at this camera thing, and I was using it for them. They had camera equipment. I was using it for them, making their
Mm,
videos, social media, whatever. This is 2015, 2016 is when I started, and
Mm.
then, 2017, I started getting really good. I'm like, "This is my thing." I bought my own camera, and I'm doing videos on the weekends. Well, they basically came to me and said, "You need to stop doing videos and you need to focus on marketing and recruiting and sales because you're clearly distracted or whatever." And I was like, "No, I don't want to do that." But I'd
Mm.
been loyal to this company. I'm like, I can do both things. Everything's fine." Well, they called me in and they fired me after like 4 or 5 years. And then they hit me with a lawsuit inventing all of these alleged like workplace violations. And like it's like 10 pages long. You go down the list, like none of it was true. But they wanted to
mhm,
scare me into saying, we can hit you with this, or you can sign an NDA. And when you're in a company for a
mhm,
long time, you go through exponential growth, you learn things. So it was really just a
Mhm.
tactic to get me to sign an NDA. So there I am on the receiving end of this scary looking threat of a lawsuit, kicked out of a company that I felt like I dedicated my whole life to. I knew the whole story in and
Right.
out. I knew the
Right.
culture, the founder's story, all that. And it felt like the walls were closing in. And I was just so scared because
Mm.
like they're this multi-million dollar company. What am I going to do? And so I left the building. They revoked my key card, and I'm just out in my car. And I look at my car. I'm like, now I don't have a way for paying for this Forerunner. Like, what do I do?
mm,
I drove across the street to a competitor company, and I just went into the door, and I said, I would like to make videos for you. And it was the
Mm.
ballsiest, most absurd thing. And I knew the guy, but like we'd had just kind of a basic friendship. And he goes, okay, well, here's what we're doing. We're going on a little incentive, sales incentive, vacation video, vacation trip to Mexico. I'll give you a camera, rental budget. You can make a video out of it. And let's just see what happens. And so I went from literally feeling like my whole world was ending to, I know enough about videos. I'm just going to march my happy ass, honestly, it's depressed ass at that point, into this building and just cold pitch them with no LLC form, no idea what I was doing. And I just said, I want to make videos for you. And that began everything else. That began videos for bigger companies, for bigger YouTube channels. And then it eventually became Tanner Fox, became MrBeast, became this business now. And I genuinely remember like feeling like I should just go crawl into a hole and like feel sorry for myself right now. And I didn't drive home. I drove across the street to their competitor and I just pitched myself like an idiot and it worked.
So that sounds like that was maybe the best day of your life.
Yeah.
To be honest, you know, up until that point.
Well,
you
and
know?
what makes
I chose
you
to make it that way, right? That was the choice.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And what makes you so extraordinary, just like our other guests, is that you have that pivotal moment, right? Where it's like you can cry in a fetal position and it be the worst day of your life. Or what makes you extraordinary is you choose the other direction and you go march and you do, and you have the audacity, or what was the word that I loved yesterday that we had on another
gumption?
podcast? Yeah.
No, and
You need that.
And I think it's really cool how, as you were defining honesty, you landed on authenticity, you know, and then you just told a really authentic story of like, yeah, man, I got fired. I didn't quit. I got fired.
Yeah.
And then I was feeling really bad and I just drove across the street and then that started the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's not normal.
Those are the stories people fall in love with.
Yeah.
You know? Like, that's something Aaron taught me, was because when I would write my story honestly, I would leave out my flaws and the embarrassing things, and he would challenge me on it. And then when I started to write it authentically and I had included the embarrassing things that I did, it was so much funnier and so much more relatable.
Yeah.
And people just fell in love with it so much more because,
People love humans.
yeah, you know, just be more human. And honestly, Brady, this has been such a good conversation. We are at time for our first of many. We're going to have Brady Edwards a lot on the Extraordinary Story show, but we ask everybody that comes on Extraordinary, if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners on how they could live more extraordinarily like Brady Edwards, what would it be?
Pull your phone out because you've got one. Film yourself just talking because you can do that. And do it 100 times until you actually start to like what it is you see. Because even if you don't end up posting it, you're going to learn something about watching yourself back and just going, is that what I sound like? Is that what I look like when I talk? And it's so
Humbling.
like, it's so humbling because we have this perception of how we're probably coming off in the world. And then there's 8 billion other people's perception. You're the only one that's not in on the joke. And so when you can watch it back in a video, you learn a lot about yourself. And that increase in self-awareness, we're in a really rare time. There was a time when like they didn't really have, like most common people didn't have mirrors. You know what I mean? Like they didn't know what they look like. It's like now, not only do we have mirrors, we have 4K video and you can see yourself in this really weird way. But in the process of just talking or speaking something out or trying to just ride an idea out, fleshing it out in real time, it's like kind of like modern day journaling. And in the process of doing that, you'll probably be shocked at how much you learned about yourself. And if you end up posting it, you may find that a lot of people along the way also like you too and are interested in what you have to say. And that's never happened in our species. This is a very rare window that we're in. There weren't phones like this 20 years ago. And so you can get used to it because we're in it every single day and it feels like it's been here forever. But if you really zoom out, even 100 years, this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to us. And so you can choose to capitalize on it right now or not. And your grandparents used to toil in the fields and farm 12 hours a day, backbreaking labor, growing their own food and hoping that, you know, the storm doesn't wipe out their crops. They'll sit there and curse you from the heavens because you can just set aside 2 hours on your little glow device and change your whole life. Like they'll just be, you know, pretty wild.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's either you do it or you don't.
What an actionable piece of advice. That was awesome. Hey, you can read more about Brady Edwards at joinextraordinary.com. That's JOINEXTRAORDINARY.com. I'm Forbes Shannon.
Christine Butler.
Brady Edwards. Thank you for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.